Good morning. So we're having a little bit of technical issues here. Good morning and happy Monday. Yes, it is a holiday, and you know what? Monday happens anyway. And so we are here every Monday to kind of kick off the week in a positive mindset. As solopreneurs or small business owners in the advocacy space, we know that mindset is of the utmost importance for everyone, and especially for those of us in such service based businesses like advocacy. We know that the work that we do is hard work and it taxes us in all of our resources. A few weeks ago, we talked about the five currencies of entrepreneurship. And if you didn't see that one, I'm going to encourage you to jump back and take a look at that, because those are the five resources that we have access to that are not infinite. They're finite, right? We only have so many of them, so much of them. And so we have to be really good stewards of those resources, time being one of them. um, it's also mindset work to stay that we're in the right place in our mind. So this morning we're having some technical difficulties. I had some on my side. Apparently, Kayla's got some on her side. So we're just going to take a minute to talk a little bit about this new week. Oh, it looks like here she comes.
Woo!
Hey, good morning, Kayla. We were just talking about persistence and positive mindset so that when things come up, we can manage through them. I thought that technical difficulties are always a good opportunity
Yeah.
to reinforce that. How are you this
They're
morning?
some of the most painful ones for me because I'm like, I don't understand the problem. Just work, please.
Right. Well, I think that's one of the reasons that technology is so challenging is if I don't understand how it works, I can't fix it. Right. And so there's lots of
Well,
times it's like
it's more like
math.
so I keep having this issue when we go to get on StreamYard to do Mindset Monday, but I use StreamYard personally to record my podcasts and I have guests come on my podcast and I never have any issues there. It's only for whatever reason when I'm showing up in your studio that it becomes a whole to do.
I
So
have
that to
no
me does
idea.
not make sense, which is the bulk of
Nope.
the frustration.
Right. Well, and it doesn't make sense. I don't know. Anyway, good morning. Somebody just jumped on. It's good to see you on this happy Monday. Drop in the chat where you're dropping in from. We were just talking about technical challenges and our pillar of persistence and perseverance and resilience against technical issues, which kind of falls into one of the things that we're going to talk about today. We have talked about Alex Sharfen before, and we know Kayla and I both listened to him, and um, she turned me on to him. So, Kayla, I'm going to let you kind of introduce our topic this morning. You'll see at the bottom it says the self love continuum. I love this. I can't wait to talk more about it.
Right. So yeah, usually we pick a quote and kind of talk about that, but I felt like I listened to this podcast and really wanted to bring it to you guys. So Alex Sharfen is an entrepreneur, and for a while he was doing coaching for other entrepreneurs. He and his wife just closed their business a few months ago because they felt ready to do something else. They haven't decided yet, but I bet it's going to be relationship coaching because they just really seemed like they
Wouldn't
were
be
moving that
surprised either.
direction. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but anyways, he's an incredible human being. If you haven't listened to his podcast yet, you should. He has this whole it's all built around like 20 years ago he set out and wrote down and created the description of the entrepreneur. I can't even speak. It's such a hard word. Why do
Entrepreneurial.
they
It
make
is a
such
very
a hard
challenging
word for
word.
us?
It is
Personality type.
multisyllabic whole thing.
Yeah. And he talks about how there are some of us who are just made this way to become entrepreneurs and we don't really fit into the employee box. And he ties it all the way back to back in the day, the caveman era, and calls us the evolutionary hunters. We were the ones who got up and were always on the move and, finding the food for the tribe, defending the tribe, that kind of thing, looking to make things better. And now in modern day, that translates into the entrepreneur who's setting out to change the world. But he has a lot of different philosophies about how we are built differently, we are wired differently, and a lot of the advice that applies to the typical standard, probably everybody else, doesn't fit so well for people who have this personality type. So he comes back with a different perspective for a lot of personal development type things. So he just ended his podcast, I think in March, as they were closing the business. He has 900 something episodes, and he's keeping them all hosted. That way everybody can still access the content. But one of his final episodes, he wanted to talk about the self-love continuum, because there is a lot of talk in the personal development space and the entrepreneur space about self-love and self-care. And how he explains it, self-love always seemed just too ambiguous. And he is all about a clear system and process and trying to put structure around ambiguity. So that's what he talks about in this episode that I wanted to share with you, is that self-love, loving yourself, you don't just wake up one day and step into self-love. And that's the kind of the way he starts it. And it makes so much sense. Really, the first step that he talks about is self-awareness.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
sadly, I think that just that first step, so many people miss.
Well, so I love this, and I too, Kayla you sent me the link over the weekend. I've listened to it a couple of times, and I have really just been able to. It's really interesting because I don't know that I could have voiced what was happening to me, and that's what I appreciate about him so much, is that he puts words and terms around things that I've already been experiencing and been unable to describe or talk about or that kind of thing, specifically in this one, right? So those of you that have been watching for a while know that I have recently been diagnosed with diabetes. I've been doing a lot of diet change and exercise stuff and things to get, because I'm bound and determined to be diet controlled. And so when I was listening to about this self-love continuum, I was immediately taken with, oh wow, this is what is happening actively in my life. Specifically, this is the easiest place for me to see it right now, because if you had asked me a year ago or 18 months ago, when my children came to me, they run the mini marathon in Indy every year, and they offered me the opportunity. They said, you should run the 5K with us. In that moment, I realized how poorly I felt about myself because I couldn't do it, and it was just a 5K. And so over the course of the next 12 months, I set out to take very specific daily actions that would move me towards the possibility of maybe being able to do the 5K. And as I did that, it's 18 months later now, right? And I was able to do the 5K in May. And now, literally this weekend, I was on a treadmill running. Like, okay. So the reason that this progression that I just explained it all came out of, I'm just going to do some walking every day. Like, that's literally where it started. I said, you know what? I can't run a 5K. I can't walk a 5K. I don't even know how far I can run. I don't know. Maybe I can walk a block. But my goal and my action that started this momentum into now I'm running on a treadmill was, I'm just going to do some walking each day. And that's where this continuum I see, right? Like I moved up into this one thing. I'm just going to do this one thing that's going to move me towards. And now I'm walking miles every day and I'm running on a treadmill. What the? So that was really kind of like you said, what is that thing that triggers the awareness that I need an
Mm-hmm.
action that's going to start moving me in the right direction? Um, Pretty cool. I'm just really impressed with that whole progression of things because who knows, maybe I'll be able to run the 5K faster next year. Like, not just walk it, but actually run it and get some time. Crazy. And I feel better. Like, we've talked about this, right? I feel better every day, not just about that, but about me and who I am and what I'm doing and how I'm showing up. Oh, we got some folks jumping on. Good morning. Drop in the comments what you're doing this Labor Day. We're talking about self-love continuum from Alex Sharfen. So what are you thinking there, Kayla?
So
I love that awareness thing.
So I want to go through the different levels that he talks about. So it starts with self-awareness, which makes sense. I mean, you have to be able to have some introspection to look at yourself and the way you talk to yourself, the way you
Right.
treat yourself, to kind of start to see where you are and what you can do to move yourself upward instead of downward. So this is where he talks about it as a continuum. It's not just, you don't just wake up and have self-love. So after self-awareness, the next step up is self-acceptance, which it's interesting because before I heard this, I, like you said, he puts structure and framework and words to things that previously were just sort of a nebulous, like, subconscious thought. So after self-awareness, you can start to have some self-acceptance. I know for me personally, there's a lot about the way I am intrinsically that did never fit in with the regular box, the typical box of seemingly everyone else around me. And honestly, if you've ever felt that way, please go listen to Alex's podcast from the beginning, because it honestly changed my life. I found his podcast last March, and by like the second or third episode I was literally bawling because the
Mm-hmm.
stuff that he describes as the way I had been living my life for over 30 years, and I didn't even understand the damage that I was doing to myself personally, because I wasn't up in the positive of the self-love continuum. Let me just keep talking through the
Yeah.
different aspects. So you've got self-awareness. The next step up is self-acceptance.
Self-acceptance.
Then you can move into self-appreciation.
Appreciation.
And from there, you get to self-love. Now, there's also a negative side to this continuum. And unfortunately, without self-awareness, you tend to be on the negative side. So below that, when we're slipping downwards, hold on, I just had it. I was bringing it up. There we go. You get to self-judgment, which I think a lot of us can identify with. And
Yes.
then self-criticism,
Mm-hmm.
self-loathing, self-disgust, and if you get low enough, self-hatred. So that's the continuum that he speaks of, and it starts with awareness, but oftentimes when once you have awareness, you realize that you've been in these places of criticism and judgment, and that I didn't even understand that is where I was living my life. And I encourage you to go check out this podcast, and he's very open with the fact that that's where he spent most of his life, like until relatively recently. He was he kind of, it sounds like, fell into a good opportunity and ran with it in college. And he was I forget which company, but it was something new in technology in like the 2000s.
Technology.
Yeah, he was in the
Yeah.
right place at the right time and the right person.
Right.
um and he grew that to a multi-million-dollar business rather quickly, and he was running all of it. But he talks about how he didn't understand how to run a team at that time or how to take care of himself. And he talks about how he was running that entire company fueled by self-judgment and self-loathing. He wasn't taking care of himself, his physical body. He was significantly overweight at that time. He wasn't giving himself rest. It was just go,
Yeah.
go, go, go. He said he lost so many employees because he just treated them so poorly, and he just didn't understand the things that he knows now and teaches and preaches so widely. But
Right. I think it's really interesting when to think about this on this continuum, because I think all of these things are things that we've experienced. And once we have this framework and this understanding of how this works, it's easier to move ourselves intentionally, which is another like thing that we talk about is the intentionality. Like when and yeah, the place that I for me every day, and hopefully some of you will relate to this, every day there's a point in the day where I say, oh, you dummy, right? Talking to me, right? Because I do something silly, or I make a mistake or whatever that is. And I've noticed that when I do that, one, it's a trigger for me to be aware, right? And then the next thought behind that is, "Ah, don't talk to me that way. Like, this isn't that big a deal." And so that is the action that counteracts and starts to move me back into a better mindset, a better place about how I feel about myself
right. So what I'm
and
hearing
what's
you say
happening.
is that you were having a moment of self-judgment or perhaps even self-criticism,
Criticism.
but you've gotten to a place now where you have enough awareness to correct it, reframe it, and bring yourself back up into self-acceptance and just accepting that, okay, you made a mistake. And even we can take that one step further, and not call it a mistake, but rather you learned something.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And that's such a game changer. And it happens every day. And I think the conversation that I and what I'm hoping that folks are getting out of this conversation today is, one, just the awareness, and two, the understanding that this is all fluid. And through a 24-hour period, I can't even tell you like where on this, like, my hope and my goal is to keep myself somewhere between self criticism and self acceptance at all times. Right. And I think that for me has been a game changer because it gives me a visual to think about where
Mm-hmm.
I am through experiences, through things that are happening. That's much more realistic. And I love that Alex said this too in the podcast, that it's not realistic for me to believe that I'm going to be in self love all of the time. Quite frankly, there are moments that I achieve self love where I sit and I think, oh, this is great. My life is good. I'm in a good place, all of this stuff. And it's very fleeting because
Right.
60 seconds, 90 seconds later,
And he talks about that even for him, and that's
yes,
why he got, for years, he begins the podcast with, for years, being so frustrated about anytime anybody would talk about self-love, or, oh, you just need to love yourself, like, how that it just felt so unrealistic, and then in
yeah,
turn unhelpful.
right.
Whereas when you look at it at a continuum, and again, just start with that awareness, and then start to put in, like you were talking about, those small positive actions, you can
Yes.
begin to move yourself more in that direction. And this is definitely one of those things. It's about the journey and not the destination.
Say that again. It's about the
The
what? Say it
journey.
again. Yes, it's about the journey, not the destination. Um,
But
I
guys,
I
I
have a
if
yeah.
anybody out there, if this is resonating with you, if any of the things that I'm saying sounds familiar or is striking a chord, please go check out his stuff, because I can tell you, I would not be anywhere near the business owner I am today if I had not found his content, because the work that he does has helped me to understand myself and thereby move myself into self acceptance when I was living in self criticism. And I was in my head in my own way more than I could even understand.
Right? I love this. Let's kind of talk about that piece of this because I think a lot of us, even in advocacy, whether we identify with this particular personality type that Alex talks about or not, we are in a place where we are regularly the system that is not where we're challenging that, right? We talk a lot about being change agents, and so we show up in a lot of ways that are outside of the status quo, and as a result we hear things and we get feedback from lots of places that what we're doing isn't quote unquote right or isn't acceptable or isn't. And I think that I'm trying not to go too much, but the messages that we get from exterior as advocates put us in a place where it's a lot easier to slide down this
Mm-hmm.
continuum.
Yeah.
And so again, with Mindset Monday, that's one of the things that Kayla and I, Kayla brought this to me and we started it because personally we felt like we needed something to kick us off in the right place so that we could show up positively and be as helpful as possible to everyone we serve. So it's really important, I think, in our advocacy work to just think about, the fact that again, this persistence, this resilience, this awareness, this all of these things help us show up and be better advocates for those we serve. Um,
Right. Yeah, I think you make a good point as bringing it specifically to advocacy. Human beings in general, we have a tendency that if we don't have a category or a box to immediately put something in, then it's kind of rejected out as a reject, something
Right.
negative, bad, doesn't fit, formed improperly, something like that. And when you're looking at the
Yes.
healthcare system and the fact that I am pretty sure I've shared this before, I've been working in healthcare since 2012. I have never met an independent patient advocate in my job as in healthcare and as a nurse in the
Right.
wild as I speak. Never.
Right.
So I have the full expectation that working in this area as an independent patient advocate, whenever I interact with anybody, I start with the assumption that they have no idea who I am, what I am doing, and they're
Sure.
automatically, whether consciously or not, it's probably a subconscious
Mhm.
thing, but they're automatically trying to fit me in a box and they can't. And so that
Yes.
creates an immediate, frustrating dynamic underneath.
Yes.
So
Yes.
in order to serve our clients the best, which is ultimately the goal here, we have to, before we do this work every day, put on our mental armor and shield and know
Yes.
that we are starting from that position of confusion, frustration, and that propensity to want to just push us out. When
Yep.
you start with that expectation, it can actually be easier then to deal with that
Yes,
response.
that's right. Right, right.
And
And
it make it less
pleasantly,
personal. It's not about
yes,
you. It's about
right,
the role, and that's what we signed up for, and
yes,
it's what's needed. So
right,
accepting that, and I feel like filing that as like, okay, this is the place we're going to start. And I feel like it's part of my job at the beginning of interaction is to very quickly shift that tone to I'm here to help. You know,
right.
I'm sure you haven't dealt with this
Yeah,
before. I'm here to help. I help with communication. I'm going to make sure that what you're saying, your patient is understanding and it's being followed. Just starting like
right,
that has worked wonders for me.
right. And it makes it pleasantly surprising when we don't meet that mindset. It's like,
Right.
oh, hey, right? And I think that again, a lot of this has to do with being realistic with ourselves. One, being realistic that we're not going to be in self-love all the time. Like, if my goal can be the happy middle all the time, then that's pretty good. And then again, setting yourself up for, I don't know, it's all about, I've learned this over the last year as doing this Mindset Monday, Kayla, because one of the things that I do is I have a place in my planner for my daily affirmation, and I haven't filled it out yet today because I've slept in a little bit later, but my daily affirmation goes right there. And I typically use whatever we talk about on Monday as my daily affirmation through the week to kind of keep me focused on the conversations that we had. So today it'll be about, self-love and appreciation and that kind of thing. I'll put that in there. But I think that staying aware of that is, like you said, the first step, right? Being self-aware. Where am I? How am I feeling? What's happening? And I think sometimes for me specifically, but I'm sure this is a lot of us, I find myself forgetting to check in with myself throughout the
Mhm.
day. And I've noticed on the days where I do that, it makes it easier to stay in the upper half of this continuum. Because when I start to get into a slide, I can stop and check in. Okay, what's happening? Why am I feeling discombobulated? Why am I feeling overwhelmed? What is happening? What do I need inside to get myself back on track? I wish that I had learned this in my 20s or 30s. I really do. I think it would have changed a lot of things for me. However, it's never too late. Like, I'm in my 50s and I'm learning it, and boy, does it make a difference. So don't let that be a deterrent, right? Like, when you get it, go with it. So daily check-ins, well, hourly or whatever. I don't know. Some people even set alarms,
Right. Yeah,
you
that was going
know?
to be my suggestion. If this is
Yeah,
something you feel challenged with, set alarms. It doesn't you don't have to do it forever, but maybe
right.
for a day or two, just to help to bring that awareness if it's something that isn't spontaneously happening, just in your mind.
Right, right. If you haven't, done that. So I think that I'm most excited to kind of hear about, because we're running out of time here. I'm super excited that folks decided to join us. Thank you for joining us on a holiday. And if you're catching the replay, drop in the comments replay so that we know that you listened to this. And I also want to hear about what do you think about this whole self-love continuum? Like what,
Yeah, and I just want to
you
say
know?
we barely scratched the surface on it. The
Yes,
podcast
right.
episode is actually a bit longer than our entire Mindset Monday. So, really, the
Yeah,
goal was not to delve into it quite as deeply as we typically do when we're just focused on a
yeah.
quote, but the content that he delivers in that episode and really all his content in general just has so much value. I really wanted to bring it to you guys for this self-care pillar that we're under today.
Yeah, I love that. And Kayla, just so you know, I've dropped it into the chat, so it should be in the comments below.
Yeah, I
If
did
you
see.
want to go check out that, go check that podcast episode. Couldn't think of the word. Podcast episode. Go check that out, and then come back and talk to us about, how that. Did you relate to it? Like, were there anything that you were like, oh, that's what I'm doing? Because that's what I find a lot of times when I listen to his podcast is like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, that's what I'm doing. So let us know. And we'll be back next Monday. And hey, listen, if you guys are going to be in Vegas, make sure you check me out. Like, find me, text me. My cell phone number is on the one on my webpage, 615-581-7566. Feel free to text me. I'd love to get a cup of coffee, hang out for just a few minutes, make sure that we get some face to face time. I'm really excited about being out there. And if you're not, don't worry, because we will be doing a debrief session inside the circle to share everything that we learned out there. And I know there are some of the other advocacy organizations are doing the same. The PAC board in Chicago are doing focus groups following the summit. And I think Health Advocate X is also doing one. So there's plenty of opportunity to connect with those of us that are out there. If you're not able to go this year, no worries, no FOMO. Okay.
Yeah,
All
I'm
right.
not going, guys.
Yeah. So we'll see you back here next Monday, same time, same place. In the meantime, think about this self love continuum and try and stay in the middle somewhere. I'm going to try. We'll see what happens. Thanks, guys. We'll see
Perfect.
you
Take care.
later. Bye.